Welcome to Love and Live Abundantly. I'm Ilona.
I'm Bill. Do you want to love more effectively?
Do you want to live fully and love more courageously?
We talk about what all that means
and how you can achieve it. Join us.
Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be back here. I've been away for a couple of weeks and was just made it back in our last session, and now here I am again. I'm here with Ilona Polka. My name is Bill Mock, and I am one of the co-hosts of this Dog and Pony show. Apparently, what we're going to talk about today has something to do with trauma, and more specifically, has to do with the trauma response and its effects in your current life. At some point in the future, we'll spool out of that and talk more about then what do you do to rectify whatever is going on in your life. So, hello, Ilona, how you doing?
Hello there, Bill. How are you, Dr. Bill?
Just ducky.
Just ducky. Just ducky. Yeah, so I wanted to, talk about how most of us have experienced some sort of trauma in our lives. Most of us childhood trauma. And, from that comes our trauma response and how our brain automatically reacts, right? When we experience that trauma, and it's like a learned habit. And so, and it's to protect us, right? That's what our brain's job is, to protect us. So when we're in a trauma situation, our brain automatically defaults to that trauma response. And that can look a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Right. And so there are four main ones. I think they just added Fawn a few years ago. I don't think you probably didn't learn Fawn in school. Did you? No. No. Okay. So there's fight, right? That's the first trauma response. And some of that can look like wanting to be in control of things, and making sure that, you're doing it because you're the only one who knows how to do it right. You're not great at delegating, and or there's that fight, right, where you just want to walk away, or you want to actually fight and argue with the person, right? If you're triggered in some way, or somebody says something to you in a way that doesn't make you feel good, and your trauma response comes out, that can look like a fight trauma response.
Okay. Why don't you do the other two?
Flight is where you leave. You don't stay around. It's easy to detach yourself from the situation. You either avoid it, keep yourself busy. Often people have lists, right? Because they need some organization. I always say that realtors, being in the profession, actually today's my 22-year anniversary of getting my real estate license. I feel that realtors are really great at organization, and that is because I'm sorry, I'm going back to the fight. But that trauma response has certain different personality types and ways that they like to do things, right? So the trauma responses can be good and they could be negative. So the flight, you're more detached. And can you give us an example of the flight trauma response?
Well, one of the simplest in my business is couples who come in and invariably, um, when an argument comes up or when anxiety arises in a relationship, one of the members flees. And I've had people come into my office and say that they can't make a relationship last more than a few months, and they wonder what's wrong with them. Well, if their automatic and unconscious response to their spouse or their lover challenging them in some significant way is to split, flee, then that kind of explains. So it might be worthwhile to say, so what is it that engenders in you this automatic and unconscious response of running away? That and we'll talk about fight or flight in just a bit, but you haven't done all four, I don't think. Did I miss one?
No, freeze,
Yeah. So you're
freeze,
going to do that one now?
yes, yes. And that is, where you don't do any, you freeze, you don't make a decision. That could be the please and appease. You want to make everybody else happy and you don't take care of your own needs, right? Um, and you just become stuck. Well, no, some of them are interchangeable, right? So I feel like some of the characteristics can, I think the main ones are fight and flight, right? And then you have freeze and fawn, which
Right.
the fawn is more the please and appease. But by staying frozen, you're pleasing and appeasing as well. But you're unable to make a decision either way. And so if or confusion, right? It's people like to say in confusion a lot. What? I don't know what that means. What do they automatically go to that default of not knowing, right? Because at one time that probably saved their lives. And then fun, that's really the big please and appease, doing no boundaries or, not the greatest boundaries. Um,
And fawns try to be as invisible as possible.
yeah,
They stay below the radar whenever.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't want to bring attention to themselves, they're just quiet.
One of the really what there was something that you said just grabbed me, and and I think it's important to highlight here, and that is that we all have trauma, as you point out, and we all have really dramatic things that happen in our lives, and they're sometimes good, they're sometimes bad, whatever. Um, and two things here. One is some of the really super good things that might happen in your life that are so loaded with um, emotion, uh, and everybody would think otherwise that they were really nice. They can imprint on you just as strongly, and they can influence how you behave in your future life. The fact is that everything that happens to us in some way influences how we act today. And the impact of some of the traumatic events leaves us with really durable ways of acting today. Not all of them are necessarily good or bad, but when they impair your ability to live your life completely and wholly and productively, project yourself into your world, if they impair your ability to do that in a way that works, then you got to deal with it. Then you got to say, all right, well, there have been other traumas in my life, and I'm not sure that they're really impairing me right now. But boy, there is this one. Oh yeah, and I can see its effect now today, and the way that I operate. Whenever a particular recognizable cue shows up in my life, so somebody challenging me in some way, or somebody wanting to love me in some way, or somebody uh, wanting to question me in some way that raises my anxiety levels. And when that happens, I go to the thing now for somebody like me 70 years ago that might have worked in that really terrible traumatic moment. But one size does not fit all, does it? So somehow or other, I've got to be willing to stop, say, okay, this is a pattern. I have to remember the old thing that's stitched on the sampler on the wall that if you keep doing what you always did, you always get what you always got. So I need to stop doing what I've always done, but I sort of kind of have to figure out what is it that's triggering me to do that? Yeah. Is it related to some trauma in my youth? Yeah. And what can I do different?
I don't even, I don't know that it is always so noticeable for people, right? So what are some other ways that that trauma response is holding people back from what they really want, right? Like not enough money, not a partner, spiritually, physically, all those different things. I feel like those emotions show up in other areas of our life. So somebody may not even realize, um, like one of the women in my coaching program, she said, well, my family life was great. My parents were wonderful, they were kind, but they weren't emotional and they didn't talk about their feelings. And so, it like not, I feel like that too, we think as trauma as being something horrific, but and not meeting an emotional needs of a child is trauma, right? And so whatever belief she took away from her parents not being emotional with her was holding her back in her life. And so she had a failed marriage and she wanted to be in partnership and she wanted to start her own business, but she never felt loved and she never felt worthy. And that came from her upbringing. So I think that, having the awareness is great of it, right? I mean, it takes a step out of the equation. But I don't know that that it's crystal clear because a lot of people tend to forget that, right? They push it down and they shove it under the rug and they don't remember. I mean, I had a friend who didn't remember she was, molested as a child until she got married, and then that came out. So our brains can do that, right? They're so amazing. And I feel like we don't know, oh, we know a lot, but we don't know everything about the brain. And how, and then I had another woman, she's like, really, my brain stops me, even though I know what I need to do, it'll stop me to protect me from that trauma response all those years ago. And I'm like, absolutely. you know, uh, so I do feel that, it just shows up differently for some people. Now, you having the knowledge, right? Like you got into psychology, so you started uncovering yourself, um, unpeeling those layers of the onion through psychology.
Well, I'm going to stop you there. I did not get into psychology for self-therapy, although some of my peers did. I got into psychology because there was a branch of psychology that felt more like engineering, and that fascinated me. And so I originally started out as an engineer.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's right. I had 2 years of engineering.
Oh,
Uh-huh.
geez, that
Oh yeah.
explains a lot.
Excuse me. And as it turns out, I took this interesting class, and actually, a little self disclosure here. I was in an engineering degree program, and I was It was one of my skill sets. I like that stuff. I like science. I like numbers and math and stuff. And I was going to become an engineer. And um, I was sitting at a drafting table, and it tells you how long ago that was. They were just then thinking about CAD design. And I was sitting at a drafting table, and I thought, hmm, is this really something I want to do for the rest of my life? No, even though I'm good at it. So I went to the counseling service at school, and I saw the psychologist, and I said, I don't, this is weird, and I'm not really in pain or anything, but this just doesn't feel right. What do you think? And she was wonderful. She gave me a test called a cooter. I love that name. I've never forgotten it. And it's a test where you get a series of questions, a whole bunch of questions where you say, so if you had such and such in this circumstance, what would you rather do? This, or this? And you keep doing that throughout the whole test. And at the end of the test, when it gets scored out, it gives you information about what's your preferred profession. How about that? And I looked at it and I saw scientist in me. I said to her, "All right, but what's the accuracy of this? What's the basis of this? Can you tell me about the math and so on?"
Of course, Mr. Engineer with all the questions.
And she did, and she explained it to me. And I thought, okay, well, what does the test say about me? And she said, well, your score on this test is consistent with the scores of people who happily do psychology, social work, teaching.
Mm.
How about that? She said, you might want to think about it. Maybe, maybe you want to change your career pointing. And I said, yeah. I said, and it was downhill from there. It was the right way to go. The fact is that the reality is that I was kind of an oddball in all my psychology and other courses, by and large, because of my orientation towards engineering and science. And then I found behaviorism, and that uses engineering and science. And so I've had a home like that ever since.
Okay.
Yes.
Behavioral health, that's, yeah.
Yeah. And and you can tell if you watch the workshops that I do that I still have that bent. So if I cite somebody, if I talk about somebody, uh, and I cite some author somewhere, you can bet that there's somebody who has that same bent because we talk about birds of a feather, we flock together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, so that was way more than I think anybody wanted to know. But when you hear my answers, you can hear that I think I give myself away. I think I make it clear that I want to hear, is there an empirical study that supports that? That makes sense, but has anybody done any research on it? Is there anything to back that up? Is there some correlation? I like that language. So from now on, when you hear me talking like that, one of the things you've said to me in the past is, can you please use English? Uh, the fact is, my jargon is a mix between psychology and engineering.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just falls out of me unintentionally.
Yeah.
So
No, I know
I,
that. I
I
know.
appreciate you backing me up and asking me to explain myself.
Well, I just because I want our audience, to be able to connect. And, I to me, I feel like it's I was thinking today about my real estate and, getting my license 22 years ago. And I just lost my thought.
Okay. Did you
Oh,
did you just freeze, to coin a phrase?
yes, yes.
No.
Oh, okay, this is what it was. Here we go. I knew I'd remember. So that, like I read the contract and I can look at that contract and I know what every single section of that contract means, right? And I know how to best support my clients. But and when I first read the contract 22 years ago, I didn't understand it all, but a lot of things clicked for me, right? Where it made sense. Whereas there's a lot of people out there that would look at the contract and not be able to understand it, right? And
Right.
so, I explain things, like HOA, if you have 16 chickens and the HOA only allows four, right? And instead of reading through that blurb on the contract where somebody may not understand what an HOA regulation is, right? I'm just using that as an example.
Is
So,
is there actually an HOA anywhere in this state that will allow people to have chickens?
no, then you don't want to be in an HOA if you have chickens.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
because I belong to an HOA back in Ohio, and you can actually have chickens.
Oh, can you?
Yeah, it was funny. I thought you were talking about us. You can only
Oh,
have
no.
four, but you can have chickens.
Okay. Okay. No, I wasn't actually. And there might be HOAs that do accept chickens up to a certain amount. However,
Especially
if
especially with egg prices being what they are.
I know, yeah, yeah. Um, so just yeah,
Gentle listener, it's easy to see how sometimes Ilona and I can get sidetracked and go down some rabbit hole. Can I get us back on track a minute?
yes.
There's a distinction in my business that I think is important, or it is to me anyway. But you gave an example a little while ago that would fall under a concept in my business called conditioning, and as opposed to trauma. And it seems to me that those are two huge influences on current behavior. So conditioning might be something that happens to you on a routine basis that surrounds you, that is in your life. It is the set of conditions in which you lived, and you are conditioned to respond to the world in a generalized sort of way. And that comes from, like you pointed out, your example of a family that is wildly emotional, like the stereotypic Italian family, or that is very reserved and is very quiet and withdrawn, and we don't talk about those things, kind of thing. Well, that results in conditioning that sets you up for a certain body of responses in your later life. Trauma in our sense is a condition, a thing that happened, or a series of similar kinds of things that happened that imprint, that where the person feels the need for fight or flight. But it imprints on you a response that then becomes generalized. And sometime in the future, something that happens that's like that, or is sort of kind of like that thing that triggered it before, triggers it again. And the longer that goes on, the broader the category of things in your life that can trigger that response. And so it becomes more and more and more your lifestyle instead of just a single response to a single kind of cue, but it
So,
becomes broader.
can you give us an example?
What?
An example?
Can I give an example?
I'll give an
Why
example. I'll give,
why don't you give an example?
I'll give an example. Okay, so I will use my own life, and boundaries. And so this is conditioning, right? Where I come from a family, an Italian family, where, the women are very caring and loving and nurturing, and we do it all. And we clear the table, the men sit there and continue talking, and the women get up and they clean the table.
And
Um,
that's a terrible thing. Oh my gosh.
and how does it show up? Right. And so how did it show up for me in my life was that men were dominant. They were more important. We were there to cater to them. That, I grew up thinking that I had to conform to make them happy. That I gave up my dreams and goals at one point because I didn't know how that was going to make my family happy.
Mm.
And the reality is it's not about them. It's my life. It's my life. And I get to live it any way that I want to. And I don't fit into my family. And the a lot of people think that I'm outspoken and I shouldn't speak my truth and I shouldn't talk about trauma and I shouldn't talk about mental illness. And even today, I've been doing it now for like 10 years, I don't know, a long time. And I can still go back there, right? Like that's how deep the conditioning is,
Mhm.
that I can feel that, oh, what is everybody else going to think? Who cares? Right? However, getting to that point where I didn't care any longer was a journey, right? Because it was relearning what I had learned as a child and not
Mhm.
and not that I don't think that women should do things for men, and men can do things for women too. I just think that my perception of it, and everybody has their own perception, and that's how I grew up in the world, feeling that I had to stay in the box
Mhm.
that they so nicely formed for me. And that's an example of conditioning.
Yeah, as you were saying that, a minute ago, I froze up because I couldn't think of one, but in my own life. But the one that's clear in my own springs from my coming from a very traditional old Roman Catholic German family, and one of the things that my family values the most, not the most, but really up there on the list, is hard work. Your value as a human being is how hard you work. Um, and one of the ways to be ostracized by my family is to be a lazy bum. And people smile at you when you work hard. And people reward you when you work hard. And people say that you're a good human being if you work hard. And there's no question that that has left its mark on me. And I don't think it was a bad thing. I'm not going to call that negative in my life. But I've been accused of not knowing when to stop. Uh, I have been it's been observed that for me, a 60-hour week seems normal. And in fact, I can become super anxious if I don't have something to do.
Mm.
And that's because there was this from the like 4 years old all the way up until I moved away from home. That was what I saw. That was that was the conditions in which I was immersed. And is it that's the other thing I want to say is, and that is that, yeah, you a little while ago you said people weren't even aware. Well, that really is the hallmark, isn't it? That your response today that isn't working for you is automatic and unconscious. And the fact is, if it were conscious, you'd probably say, oh, gee, that's stupid. I got to stop doing that. But for most of us, it just is the thing that we do automatically, unconsciously. And it takes us from the point where we're sort of kind of anxious, feeling weird, off kilter, to a place where we're more stable and we're more, and it may not be a lovely place, but it's a place we know. Yeah.
Comfortable.
Yeah. I need to ask a little question. Hey, folks, listen, don't listen to this. What's our timing looking like?
We are just about out of time. We are
How
a little
about that?
past time, but we're good.
Can we come back to this topic when we do our next one?
Yes, I think that's a great idea.
Because I have a whole bunch of notes.
Okay, good. Look at you. All
Okay.
right, folks.
Folks, listen, we would really love to hear from you. So if you have questions or comments, can you give us feedback? Um, yeah, anything, positive, negative, witticisms, criticisms, anything. Even if you have good examples, we'd really like to hear from you and we'd like to respond to you. And you can do that at
Hello.
Ilona.
You can email me at hello@truthbetold.world.
So
Again,
it's hello@truthbetold.world.
look at you.
See you next time, folks.
Take care.